Somebody should tell him to be careful or he's gonna get sucked in. The jet intake, be careful. Welcome to video 5 in the Skymaster F-14 video series. We're making great headway on this plane. Last video, we had just finished up with painting the landing gear for the mains and getting it all set up and ready to install. And that's what we're gonna continue on in this video. So we're gonna get this gear in the aircraft. All right, so it's been a couple days and our scissor linkage pieces are cured or dry. It was an oil-based paint, so that's why it takes a while. So they're a really good color match. Everything turned out nice with that. So what we need to do now is we need to take apart our current setup here. So basically we've got E-clip, E-clip, pin, pin, and then up top here we have a small pin as well. So we've got multiple sets of pins there. I'm not really sure what, because up top there's a bolt, so I'm not really sure why there is multiple sets of pins, unless that's a replacement. So that's going to be for the middle. The short one's for the middle. The long one is for there, and then maybe the medium one's for here. No, it's too long. Oh, for right there. Okay, just because that's the scale looking one, that's why. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, so that's good. And then up top here is a bolt, which is fine. So we're going to take this scissor linkage apart. We've got to take the air cylinder off kind of as a first step here as well too. So pretty straightforward stuff, nothing special here. All right, so after many hours, the gear and the swing wing is back in. I'll show you a couple tips here on getting this back in. Now this is not an easy task. As far as challenges go, this is probably number 1 on this aircraft. Getting the gear back in is a very big challenge. And the reason that that's so important, if you don't take the gear out, you are not going to be able to Loctite all the fasteners. So the gear has to come out on these aircraft, and getting it back in is a real challenge because you've got bolts underneath here, you've got things that are just a real challenge to get to. So one of the things that I did when I built one of these the first time, and I'm kind of a fan of doing this, but creating custom tools. So this is a 5mm, 4mm Allen key, maybe 5, I'm not sure. But this is cut off here. And the reason it's cut off is when you're putting these fasteners back through the gear into the swing wing structure, you're not gonna fit an L-bend in there. So you need this really short L-bend to be able to get it up in here. And you're doing a 1/8 of a turn at a time. So it's quite a tedious process, but that part's done, which is good. So next thing to do is to start running airlines. Now, on the very first one that we did, we really struggled with the gear. And I think we're gonna be better this time. One of the things that I'm gonna try first is I'm going to try just hooking up the air cylinder for the main gear itself. Now the reason that that won't necessarily work is you've got the scissor linkage, which sort of locks by itself. So, you know, if you try and get this gear up, it doesn't really move that well. So what needs to happen here is this little cylinder does need to compress like that and go up. Now it really only needs to lock in the down position, but we do need it also to move this direction. So, you know, you think, well, maybe I just won't hook up the cylinder. Well, you do need to hook the cylinder up because that's what makes it do that right there. So it's definitely a bit of a challenge, but we'll figure it out. So when this gear comes initially from Skymaster, the 2 cylinders are teed together. So your red line here and your red line on the small cylinder is teed together. Now, I'm not really sure if we're going to keep that tee or not. We need to do some experimentation and see how we're going to make this work well. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to hook up a hand pump, just my shock hand pump here, and we're going to confirm that the landing gear works in both directions. So the lines going to the other side of the gear have been pinched off with forceps. So just the air is going to come through on this side. So we've got our brakes run and all of the lines and everything are run. So we're doing our red line first, which is our gear up. So just watching the pressure as we do this as well. So right now we're at 50 PSI. It's slowly rotating into the gear well, and it takes basically 90 PSI to fully rotate into that gear well, which is fine. We've got all of our doors which can close. That's good. So we'll open, take that off. And now we'll do the blue side, which is of course the gear down. And this should come down without any issue at all. Yeah, I barely put any pressure in there and it's down no problem. So that's good. So one side of the gear is done and we will do exactly the same thing on the other side. Now, when we're doing this landing gear, we are not following any sort of stock running of the lines. I'm doing it all myself and figuring out the best way to go. So if you look on the leg there, you can see we've got keepers for all the airlines. So those are all 3D printed keepers here. This brake needs to be a little bit slack like that because when it turns, it needs that extra lead. And then we've got the brake going along the scissor linkage here and then down to the actual brake as well. So this side is complete. We'll do the same thing we've done on our other air fittings. We'll put a little bit of that rubberized CA on all the fitting locations, and we will do exactly the same thing to the other side. All right, so both of our gear are back in. Swing wing, of course, is back in. Gear's been checked and everything is working well. I think one of the key things with how we did it this time compared to the last time is that I didn't reinstall it the way that the kit was. So previously I had taken pictures and run all the lines and everything exactly how they were previously. This time I just did what I thought was best, which I think works out better. There's less interference with tubes and stuff. So fingers crossed that this gear works well. From my tests, everything looks like it's going to be perfect. So next thing to move on to is a huge step, and that is the wings. So that's going to be the big focus of this video. Once the wings are complete, then we can come back to this area. We'll do our startup plate, which is like our fueler fitting and our air fitting and stuff like that. It'll probably be on, might be on this side, I can't remember. Anyways, I'll figure that out, but it'll be just on one side. So you'll open up one of these hatches. This is where you're gonna be adding fuel. This is where you're gonna be adding air for the first flight of the day, that kind of stuff. So, but we wanna get our wing installed and everything first to have this retract and have dimensions on everything. That's why that's important, because you've only got a little bit of room in this area. Next thing to do is pull the wings out. We're gonna get one of our wings installed here. We'll probably start off with the left wing. We're gonna get it just slipped into place so we can draw this line right here, which tells us where everything comes out of the wings. All right, so we've got our left wing. I'm not sure if these screws are loose or not. We'll find out. They are loose enough. Okay, so the reason we're doing this is because the leads from the wing come out right here and plug into the fuselage. So I make a connection right here or wherever I'm gonna make it, and there's nowhere for it to come out on the actual swing wing mechanism. So that's the reason we couldn't do the wings until we get all this installed. So now we'll just take a pencil and we will draw our line here where we can have that wire come out. Now chances are it's going to be sort of central, like that area. So when this swings back, it's not in the way of everything. So I can't remember exactly where we had this before, but I think we had our wires come out here and then come over top or come this way. Can't remember. But anyways, that connection, as long as we've got room in this area for it to move and stuff, will be good. All right, so wing is off the plane, and I'll cover briefly here exactly what we got going on. So there's a fair bit going on with this F-14 wing. So all the servos are internally mounted, and we've got a few different pockets here. So if you look at how things are organized, you've got one servo here, one servo here. This servo closest to the root is going to be leading edge for this side. This servo right here has a crank that comes through and operates the flap, which is a full span flap all the way across. This servo here operates the slats, or the top of the wing right here. So that mechanism is an arm right in that area right there. And basically when the servo pushes the linkage out, it drops the slats down. When it pulls the linkage up, it raises the slats. So this essentially acts as our ailerons. When we do, in this case, left aileron, these will come up, but they don't go down. And they're also operating as brakes as well too, if you want. So when you're landing, those can come up and create drag as well. So there's a couple different things with that. And then the last servo in this pocket goes forward again as well. There's a little slot here and a little slot right there. And this one goes to the leading edge again. And we have to install our carbon arms here, which is a bit of a pain. The linkage for the flap is all set up, and the setup for the slats on the top of the wing are pretty much set up. So the leading edge is really the challenge in this on this wing, but that's basically the layout. So you've got mini servo, regular servo. So that is our layout. All right, so wing is all disassembled now. We've got our rudder surface off, our leading edge is off. Leading edge, the way this works is you've got the carbon slides that have little homes to go in, so that slides in and out. So that's why you need to add your hard points or your carbon arms to make this slide in and out. So that's that. The flap system here, it works based on a L or an elbow that sits inside here. So as that rotates, it turns that flap down, and there's a G10 receiver in there, or fiberglass receiver, that rod sits in. So it comes out, mounts on the end of a servo, and the servo turns and makes the flaps move. So pretty cool system as well. So the first thing we need to do is work on our tip lights. So on the F-14, we've got this light here, which is part of the kit. We've got our lens. So as we've done previously, we're going to cut out the red piece that's already installed on the wingtip, and we'll get that cut out and we'll get this guy fit. All right, so first step, we've got the lens cut out, or the fake lens cut out. We've got our lens shaped. These lenses look like they came pretty much shaped, but there was quite a bit of sanding to do, so those are done. And we've got a wire run from our tip to our first servo port here. So that's where we're gonna have the wire run to. So we will extend this wire as well too. It's not long enough anyways to go all the way to the root of the wing. So we'll just get this extended or cut it off about there. So we got a decent amount to work with. Save the end, and this is ready to go in. Now we have to do a little bit of sanding on this this pocket here. I didn't do that before I got the wire installed, so you just want to get rid of your glue joints. Not totally necessary, but you just want to have the maximum amount of space for this light to sit in there. All right, so we've got our wire run, we've got our lens installed for our light. Now with this setup, we could just plug this light into a 2-cell LiPo, and that's going to check and make sure the light works. So I'll do that before we continue on. And running that wire and stuff just to make sure. But next thing we're doing is the leading edge. So what I've done here is there is some pre-done pockets in the wing. So there's one here and one there. So what I've done is taken the ruler and lined it up perpendicular to the leading edge of the wing. So this right here. So from there, get it centered in that pocket and made a tiny little mark right there on the leading edge. So we've done that to that spot and that spot. Then we flip the wing over and we draw a nice straight line straight up. And this is going to be the area that we sand out for the leading edge. Now initially we'll come about halfway, so about 50% here, down to the bottom. So when this works and that leading edge slides forward, you're going to need that servo arm, if it's mounted here, or the rod, to have room to move down and forward. So that's why we need to go about 50% and down. So we'll take our Dremel and we'll get that hole cut out in the leading edge. Now we've also transferred those marks to the actual leading edge surface. So this mark lines up with that mark. Now, in the past, you would expect that there should be some backing in this area and also in this area. It's highly likely that there's some here because you've got a carbon rod, but here it's highly likely that there is not backing. So you just have to be aware of that. You know, if I take this, there's not a lot of movement in there, but it feels pretty solid right here, and elsewhere it feels pretty flexible. So in this area, I wouldn't be surprised if Skymaster actually got backing installed. That would be nice. Looks like there's a big piece in this area, which is great. So as far as that area goes, feels like there is backing in that area as well too. So that's a positive thing, because that means that when we take that carbon horn and mount it in there, we'll actually have something to mount it to. So now we'll take our Dremel and we'll make some slots here for all this stuff. So the actual hard point that we're going to be using are these guys right here. Now these are awesome. I like them. They're just a standard Skymaster horn. There'll be lots of room to put this in. The other nice thing, or the other reason that we are getting everything lined up here, is we're going to be using clevis on this setup. So with clevises, of course, we need everything to run straight, plumb, level, square. And that means that this is going to work, and our arm on the servo is also going to work. All right, so a couple things we'll take a look at here that we've accomplished. Number one is we'll just fire up the light, and because the Unilight controller just simply passes through voltage, you can hook this up to a 2-cell LiPo battery, and it works just fine. So light is on, super bright, very, very bright. So that's going to show up absolutely awesome. So that is the Unilight. It works. That's good. We've confirmed. So next thing is our cutouts and stuff here. So kind of have to play with this and get it set up. It's a bit of a give and take on a couple different levels. So as an example, if we pull the leading edge out here a little bit further, you can see kind of how these guys are sitting, and they need to be kind of tucked as far this way as possible for a couple reasons. Number one, you want them to just clear the underside of the wing, and that minimizes the amount of cutout you need to do on the face of the wing. And then when this goes all the way in like that, it sits nice and tight. So there is the leading edge all completed. So if we pull that out, kind of at our max amount that we would have it pulled out. So I don't know the exact number, but that would be the kind of the max amount, about 1 inch or so, 25 millimeters. And when we glue these in, we're going to make sure, because there's a lot of play in those, we're going to make sure that we tuck them all the way towards the skin of the wing on the underside. So they're going to be sitting as far this way as possible. Yes, there you go. So as long as they're tucked in this way, everything fits right now. So that is the wing so far. We'll get those horns glued in next, and have to high sol them in place and make sure they're going to be nice and solid, of course. So that is the next step. All right, so we've got our carbon arms glued in place. So those are glued in with West Systems 610, and that allows us to fully retract the leading edge. So those are good, which is great. And like we talked about previously, all we did was tuck those up to the underside of the wing skin as much as possible, and that allows the best movement of those leading edge slats, flaps, whatever you want to call them. So I did bring the other wing up on the bench here, so we got the green light installed on the right wing, and so essentially right now this is ready for us to start to install servos. So we'll kind of get a servo plan laid up here and take a look at that next. And I'll tell you what's gold. I've been watching this guy on YouTube. It's called The Lighter Side of RC, and he did one of these F-14s before, and it's amazing to go back through the previous videos and have everything for you already there. So if you're looking for details, check this guy out. He's pretty cool. You should probably go subscribe to his channel. All right, so as per our last wings we did about 3-4 years ago, something like that, we're copying everything exactly the same. So we've run our wires from the lights and the outboard leading edge servo. So this plug-in is sitting right here. They're run down this way, across and out. We've installed the slat, so the top surface servo, and that is now connected here. And we are going to plug the servo in and get the limit on this side adjusted. So that's why we've got the extension cable, or shop cable as I call it, installed here. So now we can just plug that into the central box and play with our servo settings. So once this one's done, then we will move on to installing our slat servos, which is here and in this pocket right here. Now, one of the things they've changed compared to the last F-14 that we did was the last one, there's a support or structure behind this structure that's built in here, and that structure was bigger and it could accept a standard size servo. So we had to fill that little gap in. Now they've added another piece of structure here, which is good because a matching servo to this one, so a mini servo, fits in that pocket perfectly. I had to do a little bit of cleanup in this area with the Dremel, but otherwise the servo fits right in there, so no problem. So we'll do leading edge, and then the last servo we install is our flap servo, which is here, and the output shaft goes this way into right there. So we'll get our radio turned on and get this guy adjusted. Now, the one thing that makes a lot of these adjustments in the setup and everything easier is the programming that we have. So having that F-14 program from previous aircraft makes it so much easier. So all we need to do is lay out our servos left to right. So in the case of the leading edge as an example, we always work left to right. So on the left wing, the outboard leading edge is going to be servo number 1. So in this case, it's 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's going to go 9, 10, then we're going to go to the right wing, 11, 12. So we're working from left to right on the aircraft. And same thing with our slat servos. So this is servo left, or in this case, it's going to be 5. And the other right wing is 6, so 5 and 6. So that's the way we work everything. So now when we go in here and adjust it, it's quite simple to adjust. So in this case, our 0 or center servo is going to be the closed or down position. And in this case, we are going to go left aileron. So left aileron brings these guys up. And we also have an air brake setting. So left aileron, we might get this much movement. Air brake goes up a bunch. So anyways, that's how it's set up. So we'll get that guy adjusted. All right, so I hold strong and true to the fact that these wings on the F-14 are hands down the hardest part of this entire plane. All right, so first wing, left wing, we've got our slats, spoilers, top of the wing, whatever that's called, done. So that's finished. That's the first thing we did. We've got our leading edge servos installed, and that is done as well. So we have to adjust everything. So when I did this, I kind of went to that midpoint on the slat. So like 10 millimeters on the other side, and kind of did our center point right there. So that's kind of adjusted, but we have to adjust our center point and then our end points for each servo. So, but we're not worried about that right now. We're going to do that after, when our wing connectors are done. So I also leave these clevises loose. This little nut right there is not really doing its thing. What I like to do with clevises, and if you guys are fans of the channel, you know this, I'll take a little bit of thin CA, drop it on the threads of the clevis, and that absolutely locks everything in place, fills all the gaps in there, and gets rid of any movement and stuff. So anyways, that's done to all 4 clevises, each point, and that's done on the wing. So last thing to do now is the flap servo. Now the flap servo, we are going to be using 599 servos. So those are going, the plug for that is already run, so that's sitting right there. So when you do these flap servos, they end up sitting basically sort of like that is kind of how they sit. Maybe out like this, I can't remember. Anyways, that's how they sit there. We have screws that go into the wood on the wing, and our arm comes out like this. So what happens with these flap servos is the servo turns and the rod actuates the flaps. So flaps off will be something like this. Take off flaps, landing flaps will be locked out. So landing flaps, when this arm's bent like this, it's essentially a mechanical lock on those flaps. In the takeoff position, it is putting a bit of stress on the servo, just like normal, but on full flaps, you are getting that mechanical lock because the arm is bent with the hinge point. So that's how this works, and it's a bit of a tricky thing to put together, but that is ultimately how this this setup works. All right, I would say probably the most important thing with the flap setup is making sure you use the correct rod. So you'll see here that we've got a flat spot on the end of the rod already done, and you can see they point different directions. So why is this important? Well, if we take a look at the pocket inside the actual flap surface, it's solid here, and there's a pocket going this way, so towards the root of the flap. So if we were to use this one sitting in the pocket like this, it's going to kind of sit something like that. You don't have a way when you put this together in the wing to tighten up that set screw. So if you take a look at the other one, you've got the set screw facing up. So that means that when this sits in the pocket, we want this one to be the one we're using on our left wing, so we have the ability to do that set screw up. That's an important step because you need to be able to slip this guy in and do that set screw up. So just one of those things to think about when you're putting this guy together. Now the fit here is very, very snug. I remember this being pretty snug and accurate, but this is definitely very accurate compared to, I think, our last one. So anyways, that's good. We'll end up putting a little bit of lubricant in there to help that guy out, but it is definitely a snug fit, which is good. You want it to be snug, so that's what we're looking for. So what I'll do in this case is take a little bit of honey goo, which is spray grease, and we'll just spray it in there. Get this installed. Make sure that it actually moves decently as well. All right, so the flap setup is pretty straightforward on this. There's just one key thing that I've found on the previous one and this one. So when that arm comes in and the flaps go to full, which is where they're at right now, this arm almost locks in place. So it kind of goes clunk and locks in place. Now the key thing is that arm will push out away from the surface towards the servo. So what you want to do there is you want to have, when you screw this servo down, you want to have that flap in the locked or full flap position, and that arm is kind of coming out just a little bit, and that's where you screw the servo down. Now I'm going to hold the servo here and get this guy unlocked. Definitely not the easiest thing to do. So when we go to the unlocked position or the flap off position, this arm can now push out towards the flap. The one downside, if you have that servo sitting too close and you try and go to full flaps, it will resist and won't let you get to full flaps because that arm has to come out in order for it to sit properly. So that's one of those key things where if you're not paying attention to that, you could easily get it installed in the wrong spot and you'll never get to that full flap locked out position. So now we're there, everything's Loctited, our shaft is lubricated, we're lubricated inside the L, and now we're just going to drill our holes in the wood plate and get this servo mount or servo screwed down to the actual wood surface in the wing. All right, so with our left wing done, we're able to install that wing on the fuselage. Now these linear actuators, you can move them if you need to without them powered up. Getting them out is really difficult. Pushing them in is more easy. So with the wing installed and not even bolted up, I was able to push this in all the way. Now the point of putting it in all the way is two things. So first thing is we can see how much wire and our location that we need to leave. So that wing is now pushed in all the way. And this is also our startup plate area. So if we do a little plate here, this is where we're going to have our fill for our fuel and our air fill as well too. And then we'll also have possibly things like our GSU plugs and things like that. But most of that stuff can go in the front end because you can just pull the nose cone off and get access to that stuff. But having the GSU plugs back here isn't a bad thing, because if you need to have them plugged in while you're starting up the plane, it's all right here, so nice and easy. And then as far as our wires go here as well too, we've left this very long. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna put some snakeskin over top of these guys, and we'll probably have those wire plugs coming right down in this area here. I was trying to see if we could possibly have like one of our ashlock connectors mounted here, you know, something like that. But the downside is, obviously, if we're doing a startup plate, that becomes an issue, having those in that area. So there's some things to think about, but I may still change that or think about it more while I work on the other wing. But this at least gives us an outline as far as where we're going to be running things. Now, as far as the cable layout goes, we've got 4 regular servo leads and a single lead for the light. So we can either do a 12-pin connector and then a single one, or we could do a 9-pin connector and a 6-pin connector. So there's a couple different options here depending on how we want to lay things out. I'm going to give that a bit more thought here before we move forward with anything. So this wing being pretty much done, we're good with it. We're going to do exactly the same stuff on the other side. All right, so both wings are now at the same stage, and it's time to get our cover plates reinstalled or installed. So you can see how everything's done there. They're matchy-matchy. So what we'll do is we'll drill a 1/16 hole in these corners, and we'll use the really small Skymaster screws. The key things when you're using these small Skymaster screws is don't put CA on the threads. Those heads will snap off very easily. So all I do is drill these holes, use my countersink bit, and make a little countersink, and then we screw that in place. All right, so the wings are done as far as the surfaces and hatch covers and everything go, and they are looking good. So we got one wing out, one wing in. Reason for that is I am measuring the leads to figure out what length of lead we're gonna do here. So we're just gonna have the plugins tuck in here so the excess will fit down there. And when the wings are retracted, obviously that's when the shortest amount is. This will all be covered in snakeskin. But if we go with 6 inches, this is hard to do with one hand, but so there's 6 inches there, kind of brings us to 3/4 of the pipe. So when it's retracted, it'll be like that. And when it's extended, we're about here. So when it's extended, we'll be about there. So if we have the plugins kind of sitting up here and we're able to plug those in when these things are extended, when the wing does come in, it will just tuck in down here. So that should work out perfectly. And I think that that's good. So that's the next thing we'll do is we'll get our plugs installed on here. So I'm probably just going to do a 6-pin and a 9-pin just to keep things fairly small rather than a 12-pin and a 3-pin. And it at least splits it up a little bit, and then they can only be plugged in one way as well too, so that's another reason to do it like that. All right, so getting our wings set up here for our electrical connections. So we've got this split up exactly the same on both wings. So we've got our flap and our light on one lead and our other surfaces on the other lead. So we've got about 6 inches sticking out, so we'll have the shrink tube come out another 1.5 inches or so, and we're gonna put our ashlock connectors on all of these guys. So we'll get that set up and get the ashlock connectors done up here, and we'll show you guys the final step. We've got about 2 inches or so sitting inside the root of this wing, so these wires are nice and tight, so they're not going to pull out at all, which is good. So this is protecting, the snakeskin's protecting it as it goes through the former work and the fiberglass and everything. So, but that is the root of the wing. All right, so I'm just getting our pins and connectors ready here, and I figured I would use this opportunity to do a shameless plug for our website. So the Lighter Side of RC, we are ever changing the website, especially this coming year and this winter season as we start to bring on more products and everything. So we've got our first order of CHA servos arriving. And the reason I'm bringing this up now is we also have ashlock connectors on our website. So we sell the connectors and pins on our website, and lots of you guys already know about that watch the channel. So just to cover this, when you do buy a set of plugs, so for example, if you buy a quantity of 1 of the 9-pin These are classed as female because they receive a plug. You'll get a pair of connectors. So you would get 2 of those connectors. And then you need to buy a quantity of 1, which is a pair, of the 9-pin male connectors. So those guys right there. And then when you buy a quantity of 1 pin set, which is 24 pins, they arrive like that. So this is the male pins, the pokey pins, and then there's the alternative side of the pin, which is the female side of the pin, which is that guy right there. So these connectors go with those pins, these connectors go with those pins. So that's the organization for the Ashlock setups. So we've got all of this listed on our website. When they show up, they're like this just to protect the pins. And then all I do is I go through and pull the base portion off first, because that is the part that's the most aggressive, I guess, or hardest to take off. I have cut these in the past using little side cutters, but this works well as well. And then just give them a spin and they'll pull off the end. So that works really well. And then you just spin them and they come off no problem. So that's the Ashlock connectors. We will have many more things being added to the website over the next couple months. And yeah, check it out, lightersideofrc.com. Lots of stuff there. All right, so the one wing side here is almost done. I just figure I would show you guys the final steps. Nezzy really wants outside. So we've got a label installed on our Ashlock connector. So we like to do that so we can plug them into the central box without being connected to the plane and be able to adjust stuff. That is a good reason to have everything labeled. It also has your layout here as well too. So we're doing exactly the same thing on both wings. So we're doing slat, leading edge 3-4. On the other wing it's slat, leading edge 1-2. So that's done. Everything's ready to go. We're keeping everything symmetrical as well. And now we'll just shrink tube. And there we go. So these guys are ready on the right wing. Now what this allows us to do here is if, for example, you wanted to hook the slat up to the central box and you use this connector on the wing side, all you need to do is pay attention to polarity. You plug your servo connector in, and then this side here can go to your receiver, central box, whatever you have. And then you're able to do your setup and operate things independently. So this wing's done. Now we'll do exactly the same thing on the left wing. All right, so we've got both of our wing connectors done up on both sides. So we've got the leads also coming from the Ashlock connectors going forward. And those are all labeled here as well too. So we've got all of our leads labeled and the mess is getting very real. Looking good. So you can see the difference here. Obviously this wing is out or extended. Now one of the differences with this kit versus the previous kit that we did a few years ago is on the previous kit you needed to retract the wings in order to get them on and off. So that's kind of a curious thing that I see that as different. And I think we may be able to get this wire out without the wings being retracted as well too. I haven't tried that yet, but it's also an interesting thing. So that's a difference. That's why we had that override switch on our program, is in order to put the wings on, it needed to be retracted. So, but there's enough room here now. Looks like that's been sanded out so this wing goes on and off while the wings are extended, which is awesome. So I think what I'm gonna do for this section is put on a glue-on keeper that uses a zip tie, and that's gonna hold that right there. And then when we do our little startup plate here, it's going to be on the other side, but we can use this for reference. So it's just gonna be a nice little plate, nothing big. I think last time we kind of made it fairly large, but we don't need a lot in there. All we need is the fuel fitting. So we use a Jersey Modeler bezel mount fitting like this, which is perfect. And then we'll have our air valve right there, and then like 2 plugs for the GSUs, and that's it. So it can just be a little tiny little plate, which means that we'll still have access, easy access to these plugs, whether those wings are in or out. It's not going to matter. So that's wonderful. So that's how things are going to look. I'm going to get those pieces glued in, and we're looking forward to moving forward with this aircraft. But that, guys, wraps up video 5 in the series on the Skymaster regular F-14 aircraft. I am super stoked to have the wings completed at this point. It is easily the biggest part of this aircraft. So wings done, huge thing accomplished, which is great. Now we get to work on the organizing of the front end, and possibly in the next video, bolting that front end to the rear part or the main part of the fuselage. So things are going very well. Thank you, channel members, for your support. If you're watching this and you're wondering what the heck is channel membership, channel members get early access to our videos, working on some other stuff, different ideas and things, but ultimately channel members right now get early access to our videos. So as I'm recording this, we actually have 4 videos, so 2 weeks of video uploaded to YouTube, and our channel members get early access to all of that. So that's just a regular thing. So thank you, channel members, for that. Thanks, guys, for watching. Stay tuned for video 6 in the series, and we'll see you in the next video.